So we'll be talking about 4 weird things that I've noticed reducing in the world and in society, especially in Indian society. The 4th one is very interesting, so do stay tuned until the end. What? I've grown up to a point where I miss some of those things, and I do believe that they may have an impact on our health, on the world around us, and so let's get into it. The first one that I want to talk about today is situational awareness. Now, obviously, we've noticed that everybody's deeply engrossed in this gadget that they carry in their palms. But what has happened is that even in spaces like in countries like Japan, it has been pointed out ages ago that a lot of the population has been behaving like zombies, because a lot of traditional Japanese folks have obviously paid utmost attention to taking care of their bodies and meditating and all of that. And today, to see the youth being engrossed in their phones while they're boarding the metro, while they're walking around in spaces, it actually backs up a lot of folks who are also pedestrians walking along. And this is something I've noticed in India as well. What it does is that it affects our body language a lot, and I do believe that women especially are at higher risk, because situational awareness, for obvious reasons, is very, very necessary for women to, be on the lookout for everything happening. Of course, I'm not saying that without that there should be no safety, but it's sort of a natural tendency that we are a little bit hyper aware of our situations, about who's following us and things like that. What I've noticed over the last few decades is that our body language, our posture has changed for the worse, and it reflects in our awareness of the situation, because we're constantly looking at the phone even while we're walking. And when the smartphone first became a thing, we had elders, teachers, parents, everyone telling us to never. In fact, this wasn't even about phones. This was about the MP3 music players that we've used. So I'm dating myself, I know. But when those first came in, we were warned that we shouldn't have them at very high volumes when crossing the roads and things like that. Today, what I notice is that situational awareness is very low, not just because of the phone, but because we're so engrossed in general and so individualistic in that matter, that our lack of awareness also creates a lot of problems with consideration. And I'm tying a few things together, so I'm not completely sure that this is only related to the phone or to an inexperience in social settings. For example, if you were to go into an aisle at a checkout counter at a supermarket, you would notice that some people do not keep their money ready, or are messaging someone while the items are being checked out, whereas they've already been checked out a while ago, and we're waiting for somebody to tell them behind them that they need to be moving on. And these things keep showing up. Maybe you're just walking and someone just walks incredibly slowly talking to a friend, and they don't move out of the way. Maybe they're standing at the gateway of a certain place they're trying to enter. Anyway, situational awareness is actually a very good thing to have, not just to be used in dangerous situations, but in general. It shows a sense of consideration for society around us. It shows grace in manners, in terms of manners, but it also improves one's posture and presence in social settings. So that's something that I've seen coming down, and I have something very interesting to discuss, so stay tuned till the end of the video. But the next point that I want to talk about is sort of related, and this has been discussed a lot, is attention span. Now, this has obviously changed the mind. The actual brain of humans has changed because of the reduced attention span. Previously, it was found that most humans, these are not people who meditate or do any mental exercises as such, but in general, the average attention span for a human on a certain topic was 2.5 minutes, which is now reduced to 45 seconds, which is a few orders of magnitude less. So this is deeply concerning because our learning, and I know that rote learning has been demeaned in several ways, but in many cases knowing something when we're younger actually helps us tie them together when we're older and have gained real life experience. So even non-applied knowledge has its plus points which must be realized later in time. For example, when we're hurtling through, on a highway at a very high speed in a very small car, one must know that, if you've studied physics, you know that a smaller car has higher chances of toppling over at high speed, and a larger car would perhaps be more stable at the same speed. So these are things that have an application. Even if you don't remember the theory that actually discusses this, you would instinctively know that there is an issue if you're going too fast in a smaller car at high speed. So these are things that, this is just one example, but attention spans have reduced across the world, but especially due to the usage of smart gadgets and increased screen time. This does not only mean the phone, by the way. This includes our laptops, this includes constant scrolling, this includes replacing one screen with the other. For example, you come back from working on a laptop and then settle down in front of the television, and then you have your phone screen on as well, checking Instagram and watching reels. So this has a lot to do with consumption of video, overconsumption of video. As you may have noticed, text content has gotten incredibly less. Consumption of text content is much less than that of video content. All video content uses text to sort of identify it, categorize it, but most of the times text is less, and one way of setting oneself aside is not merely being a generic intelligent, because most people are, but is to pay additional attention, more attention than the rest of the folks around you and I are paying. That is something that really increases one's social stature because one is better able to connect to people around us. It increases observational power. So if you are able to observe things that no one else is paying attention to, it's incredibly useful in many settings. And the most high-powered individuals in the world are very focused on certain things that they have taken up. So I think that reduction of the attention span speaks to our reduction of intelligent applications in life as a whole. So it's something that must be paid attention to, and let me know what you think about this, and I'm sure you've noticed it around you as well. The third thing that I want to discuss is sort of lack of children, and that really has to do with the reduced fertility rate, which has come down drastically all over the world. So the country with the lowest fertility rate that has been measured is South Korea. It's at 0.78, and as if you go in to see the literature around lowered fertility rates, for example in South Korea and Japan, which are exceedingly developed countries in terms of their economics, what happens is that these social indicators point to deeper problems. For example, with Korea, there's a massive anti-feminist movement. There's incredibly high consumption of pornography, and this has affected Korean women incredibly negatively. In Japan, women who performed well were actually marked down so as to maintain a very small ratio of women in medical schools and universities. So it isn't only the choice of educated women who are better off, that they do not have children with people that they do not like or respect, or a society that does not allow for a lot of maternal, a lot of space for mothers to exist. But there are many other factors that affect a lowered fertility rate. There is an increased cost of living that has affected most societies in the world, that is preventing people from having children unless one is in the highest echelons of society or the lowest rung where inflationary items are, less. Maybe they are on subsistence farming and things like that. So, but the reduction has been very drastic, and this has reduced the number of children that are there in our public spaces, and there are just fewer children. I hope we get back to a point where there are more, And one of the things that I do want to bring to light is, there's a lot of discussion on how population reduction is a good thing. So there's many ways to look at it, but there is nothing that actually states this. Resources are available for higher populations, and for all of our history, areas like China and India and Africa with an abundance of resources have always flourished, and as our population has increased, what has happened is that opportunities for migration have also increased. So this is not only to different countries, but for example, Vikings have settled previously barren lands, and so have African tribes, and this constant churn has been constant throughout history, but it's not discussed very often because we constantly discuss the negative changes that have occurred due to population, which is also true. But when it comes to something as drastic as the one-child policy implemented by China, so these have far-reaching social consequences. For example, there's sex ratio that is very drastic, and the Chinese are having to import brides from the rest of the world from poorer nations, and there are babies that are being betrothed, that are being engaged, you can change this, so that are being engaged as soon as they're born, and they're being promised to men with a lot of money, and there are so many other consequences when it comes to their security, etc. So these are very drastic measures that have impacted the total number of children in the world, and I just wanted to discuss that. Now, the last one is something that I've observed, and this goes back to, I think, a little bit of the first point, which is situational awareness, and it's the swinging of arms when we walk. Now, I remember when I was a child, I used to find myself very awkward. I used to see people walking with so much confidence, and their arms were swinging in harmony with their steps. And I thought that I couldn't do it. I was quite young, I was a child, and I thought that mine weren't. Like, I would have to put in effort, and I didn't know if it looked like marching. But anyway, all the grown-ups around me were walking with their arms swinging. And that does not happen anymore. Most people, their arms don't swing while they're walking. I've noticed a few older ladies, when they go about their walks in the evenings, their arms are, they don't listen to their phones, they aren't talking, they aren't engaged with each other, they're just walking, and their arms are swinging. But for a very large part of the population, their arms don't swing while they're walking anymore. And I know this is a personal observation, it's anecdotal, but let me know if you've noticed this as well, because I thought it's kind of a cool thing that technology changes so much, but the way it's affecting human behavior and society in general is something that is very interesting to note. So that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Do consider liking this, because it really helps the channel push this content to other people if you find it interesting. So thanks, like and share this, and see you next time.